Hello crafters, Flavia here and welcome back to another episode of my crafty tip playlist. Today we're taking a first look at the Misty Light stamping tool. This is not new at all, however I just recently found out about this tool and I am very excited about it because this might be exactly what I needed. A few years ago I filmed a full in-depth video all about the original Misty with lots of tips on how to get the most out of it. If you haven't watched that one yet, I'll link it right up here in the top right corner so you can check it out later. And you'll also find a link to my entire crafty tip playlist down in the description box. So without further ado, let's begin opening this box. I actually got it 2 days ago and I haven't used it yet, but I am pretty sure this is gonna be exactly what I needed. By the way, if you're also interested in getting this tool, know that you can find the link in the description box down below. So just for comparison, before we begin talking about the Misty Light, here are the other two ones that I have that I talked about on my previous video about the Misty. So this is the mini Misty stamping tool and this is the large one. These original Misty stamping tools, they are great for many other different stamping techniques that we cannot do with the Misty Light, such as stamping with turnabout stamps, which are so much fun. So with the Misty, you open it like a book and then you use these magnets to hold your paper down in place as you stamp your sentiment or your images. And we can use this Misty, the original one, with either cling stamps or clear stamps. So I love the Misty, and to be honest, I barely use acrylic blocks to stamp my sentiments because this is so easy to use and I barely make mistakes. Unless I let the magnets move, I just barely make any mistakes when stamping with the Misty. However, ideally you would stamp your panel before gluing it to your note card, just in case you mess it up. Then you can easily replace it, stamp the panel again, and then glue it to the note card once you know it looks good. That's the ideal situation, and that requires planning ahead, which is not my case most of the time. So usually when I am creating, I come up with the ideas as I go and I make a lot of last-minute decisions, mainly adding a stamped sentiment onto my finished note card, which is a big risk because if you mess it up, then you're gonna struggle to fix your mistake because you already glued all of the pieces, all of the panels down in place. That is why I am very excited about the Misty Light. So this is the Misty Light stamping tool. This tool is big enough to fit an A2 size note card. You can either buy it in a kit with all of the accessories needed, or you can buy them separately and get just what you need. So for example, in my case, since I have this magnetic glass platform, I only got the Misty Light because I already have these very strong magnets that will hold this tool down in place, which is what we need to use the Misty Light. And if you don't already have a magnetic platform with very strong magnets like I do, then you also have the option to buy the entire kit, which comes with the Misty Light, which is what I have over here, along with a magnetic platform and very strong magnets to hold your tool down in place as you use it to stamp your panels. Just like with the previously released Misty stamping tools, we can also use this one to stamp with either clear stamps or rubber stamps, which I'm gonna show you in a minute. The first step is to flip this acrylic door to the correct side. So here on the bottom left corner of my acrylic door, we have the word clear, which means we're gonna use this side to place the clear stamp to stamp your panels. If you need to use a rubber stamp, then we need to flip this. So the word rubber is on the bottom left corner of the acrylic door. Since I am going to begin stamping with a clear stamp, I'm gonna flip this. So the word clear is on the bottom left corner of my door. And the next thing we need to do is use strong magnets to hold this tool down in place. Next, I will position my panel in place and grab a clear stamp. So just as I would do with the other Misty stamping tools that I have, I'm gonna begin by positioning the stamp exactly where I want to stamp the sentiment. Then I'm gonna close this acrylic door to pick up the stamp, lift the acrylic door so I can apply ink to my clear stamp, and close it again so I can stamp my panel. Luckily, I got a good impression, but if I don't at first, I can always go back, apply more ink, so I can stamp exactly in the same spot. By the way, I'm using a magnet that came with my older Misty stamping tool to help me hold the panel down in place. And you can also use pieces of tape, or if your panel is too long, you can also just hold it down in place as you stamp your sentiment. So that's how you stamp with a clear stamp. Now I am going to remove the clear stamp so I can demonstrate how to stamp with a rubber stamp. So again, to be able to stamp with a rubber stamp, we need to flip this. So the word rubber is now on the bottom left corner of my acrylic door. Again, we are going to use strong magnets to hold the Misty Light down in place. Next, I will position my cardstock and use this magnet to hold my white cardstock in place as I stamp. And here I'm gonna be using a cling stamp by Spellbinders to show you that we can also stamp with thicker stamps. So again, we need to first place the stamp where we plan on stamping the image. Once the placement looks good, we need to close the door to pick up the cling stamp, lift it so we can go ahead and apply ink to the cling stamp, and then close the door to stamp the image. And again, if you don't get a good impression at first, you can always go back, add more ink, and stamp in the exact same spot, just like you would with the previously released Misty stamping tools. Okay, and here is the amazing stamped result. So the Misty Light price-wise is definitely less expensive than any of the other previously released Misty stamping tools. That is if you already have a magnetic board with very strong magnets. So the Misty Light, it is definitely not going to replace the Misty stamping tools that I already have, but rather complement it. So usually when I am crafting, I try to plan in advance. However, I always end up making last minute changes and decisions, one of them being deciding to stamp a sentiment inside my note card on the last minute. So for example, here is a note card that I created a few weeks ago, and if I am not mistaken, I decided to stamp the sentiment "happy to be thinking of you" inside this note card after I was all done. And I can definitely do that with the Misty stamping tool, such as the small one. I can always just place it open inside my Misty stamping tool and close the door to stamp the sentiment. And of course, I can do that no problem with the bigger one. I can place it open inside the Misty, use the magnets to hold it down in place, and stamp the message. However, the issue that I seem to be having all the time is I usually end up staining the rest of the panel, the section that is sticking out, because usually I forget to wipe off the acrylic door and I keep on making the same mistake over and over again, which is staining sections of my note card that is sticking out. However, I think that the Misty Light is going to solve that problem for me, because from now on, whenever I need to stamp a sentiment inside a note card that is already finished, ready to go, which happens all the time, I'm gonna use the Misty Light now, because with this tool, the acrylic door doesn't necessarily need to touch the other half of my note card. All I need to do is place a stamp down in place, close the door to pick it up, and when I lift it, I don't need to flip it all the way where it touches the other side of my note card. I can simply lift it halfway, add the ink, and then close the door to stamp the sentiment. So that is why I was so excited when I saw a crafter on YouTube using the Misty Light. Another great use for the Misty Light is if you are a scrapbooker and need to stamp right in the center of a big panel, such as this one. This is a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. So to stamp this panel right in the center, we need to hold the Misty Light down in place with strong magnets, and then we can position the stamp where we want to stamp the image, close the door to pick it up, add some ink, and then stamp your image right in the center of a large panel, such as this one. How awesome is that? So again, I don't think that the Misty Light is going to replace the other Misty stamping tools that I already have, but rather complement them and allow me to get more good stamped results regardless of the size of the panel that I am stamping on. So this is all that I have for today, and I thank you for joining me. By the way, if you're new to stamping, these tools are simply amazing and I highly recommend you give it a try. They will save you a lot of time, frustration, and wasted cardstock, especially if you're not an expert at stamping with acrylic blocks. And if you missed my previous video on the Misty stamping tool, make sure to check it out. It has a lot of information. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. Take care and see you in the next video.